Here we are with Acts chapter 12. This chapter is going to go in a little bit different direction than what we've seen recently. Recently, it's been amazing with the expansion of the missionary efforts from the Jews to the Gentiles, lots of people joining the church. Now we're going to run into some of the early problems that these saints were having. Verse 1, now about that time, Herod, the king, stretched forth his hands to vex certain of the church. Herod's not happy, and he's going to go after the church a little bit. Now, this isn't Herod the Great. This is the grandson of Herod the Great. Okay, Herod the Great is the one that remodeled the temple. His dad is Aristobulus. He was known as Agrippa the First. Okay, just to give you some historical background there. Verse 2, and he killed James, the brother of John. This is, if you're following the chosen, this is Big James. Okay, James, the brother of John, with the swords. This happened, we believe this happened around 43 AD. Basically, so Christ has been dead for about 10 years, and this is, James is one of the, other than, remember, Stephen was stoned to death. Now we hear of James. James is one of the apostles, probably the first out of all the apostles that was killed. He was killed by Herod. Verse 3, and because he saw it pleased the Jews, he proceeded further to take Peter also. Then were the days of unleavened bread. Now that's important for us to look at, okay? Let's look at these things here to understand this better. In fact, out of Ecclesiastical history, which I believe was Mosheim did this book, multi-volume series. He said, the innocence and virtue that distinguished so eminently the lives of Christ's servants and the apostles' purity of the doctrine they taught were not sufficient to defend them against the virulence and malignity of the Jews. The priests and rulers of that abandoned people not only loaded with injuries and reproach the apostles of Jesus and their disciples, but condemned as many of them as they could to death, and executed in the most irregular and barbarous manner their decrees. The murder of Stephen, of James the son of Zebedee, and of James surnamed the Just, bishop of Jerusalem, furnished dreadful examples of the truth of what we here advance. This odious malignity of the Jewish doctors against the heralds of the gospel was undoubtedly owing to a secret apprehension that the progress of Christianity would destroy the credit of Judaism and bring on the ruin of their pompous ceremonies. So this is the problem. The Jews thought this whole fiasco would be over with Christ's death. Well, then the apostles take over and it's flourishing. And now they're teaching Gentiles. So they've expanded way beyond the Jews so they can grow so much faster. And the Jewish leaders, again, see this as a threat to them. Because if the Jews believe what Peter and James and John and the other apostles are doing, they will leave Judaism. The less people in Judaism, the less power the Jewish leaders have. This is a threat to their power and influence. So they've got to do something about it. So they want to work with the government officials like Herod to get them killed. And Herod realizes, I just have to kill these Christians and it makes the Jews my friends. Wow. The enemy of my enemy, type idea. So he is going to leverage that to improve his political standing with the Jews, basically. Now, at this time of unleavened bread is Passover. So this is the time of Passover. This is happening. Verse 4, when he had apprehended him, so when verse 4 is talking about when Herod apprehended Peter, he put him in prison and delivered him to 4 quaternions of soldiers to keep him, intending after Easter to bring him forth to the people. So that's what he's doing here, basically. He's going to keep him, and then after the celebrations, he's going to bring Peter before the people. So maybe he wanted a public trial to watch the Jews to see him as on their side or favorable to them, since they responded so well when James was killed. So again, this is Herod pandering to the Jews for his political gain. Verse 5, Peter therefore was kept in prison, but prayer was made without ceasing of the church unto God for him. So a lot of members are praying for Peter. And when Herod would have brought him forth the same night, Peter was sleeping between two soldiers, bound with two chains, and the keepers before the door kept the prison. So Peter is in a military governmental building with lots of soldiers and people there, in a prison with bars locked up, in a jail cell, basically chained to two guards. He's well locked down, multiple layers of security to keep Peter locked down, basically, is what's happening right there. Verse 7, and behold, the angel of the Lord came upon him, and a light shined in the prison, and he smote Peter on the side and raised him up, saying, Arise up quickly. And his chains fell off from his hands. And the angel said unto him, Gird thyself, and bind on thy sandals. And so he did. And he saith unto me, Cast thy garment about thee, and follow me. So what's happening here is an angel comes down, taps Peter, as it says, on the side. Hey, get up, Peter, come on. So Peter goes to get up, and the chains just come right off his hands. He's now free. And then the angel's like, get your sandals, we got to go. Cast thy garment about thee. So basically change out of your bedclothes and add your clothes on so you can go outside. So you've got to change so that you can go outside, basically. Verse 9, and he went out and followed him, and wist not that it was true which was done by the angel, but thought he saw a vision. So Peter's not sure if he's fully awake yet or not, going through this. Like, is this a vision? Is this a dream I'm having of this going on? I don't know. Verse 10, when they were past the first and the second ward, they came unto the iron gate that leadeth unto the city, which opened to them of his own accord. And they went out and passed on through one street, and forthwith the angel departed from him. So this is an angel guiding Peter out of jail, and all the doors are opening for them automatically as they go. Now, the New Testament study manual says John Mark, commonly known as Mark, who wrote the Gospel of Mark, is probably the author of the Gospel according to St. Mark. He was the son of a woman named Mary, one of the leading women in the early church in Jerusalem. Believers assembled at her home, and Peter returned there after being freed from prison. John Mark was chosen as a companion of Paul and Barnabas as they left on their first missionary journey. So that gives you some background of what we're going to see here in just a second. Verse 11, and when Peter was come to himself, he said, Now I know of a surety that the Lord has sent his angel and hath delivered me out of the hand of Herod, and from all the expectation of the people of the Jews. So Peter's now realizing he's awake. This isn't a dream. He's out of jail. Verse 12, and when he had considered the thing, he came to the house of Mary, the mother of John, whose surname was Mark, John Mark. Were many there, where many were gathered together praying. So now they're gathered together to pray. This is a house church. Okay, probably one of the earliest indications of a house church. These Christians didn't have a synagogue. They didn't have an established building to worship in. They used the Jewish temple to do Jewish rites because they still saw those as true and proper. But they didn't have like a church house set up. So they would go to the house of members. And then everybody would gather there, and it would be a house church, basically. Now verse 13, and as Peter knocked at the door of the gate, a damsel came to hearken named Rhoda. Now this is what's interesting, is most of the time we don't hear of these people's names. Like, this is a damsel, a young woman, who came to answer the door when Peter knocked, basically. Her name is probably here because people who would have been reading Acts at the time when Luke wrote all this probably knew who Rhoda was. And so this is a reference for them to know, oh, it was Rhoda that answered the door. Oh, okay, that's cool. She answered the door here, and when she knew Peter's voice, she opened not the gate for gladness, but ran in and told how Peter stood before the gate. She's so excited, oh my gosh, Peter, the prophet's here. Instead of opening the door to him, she runs back inside, wakes everybody else up. Guys, Peter's here. He's here. Holy cow. And so they go to get him. Verse 15, and they said unto her, Thou art mad. But she constantly affirmed that it was even so. Then said they, It is his angel. So they could have been thinking that maybe he was dead because of it was Herod. Herod just killed everybody. He didn't take many prisoners. Uh, Verse 16, but Peter continued knocking. So he's still outside going, hello, you're going to let me in? And when they had opened the door and saw him, they were astonished. But he, beckoning unto them with the hand to hold their peace, declared unto them how the Lord had brought him out of the prison. And he said, go show these things unto James and to the brethren. And he departed and went into another place. So James, now you might be thinking, wait a minute, didn't just James die? Yeah, that's James, big James, okay? This James we're reading of here in verse 17 is the stepbrother of Jesus. He's one of the actual children of Mary and Joseph, genetically. So this is one of Jesus' brothers who did join the church and become an important leader in the church after the death of Christ. The family didn't seem to want to do much with Christ until after that time. Then we start to hear of them coming more around. Verse 18, and as soon as it was day, there was no small stir among the soldiers that what was become of Peter. So Peter shows up at the house because it's a safe place. He can meet with people he knows. Hey, let the other brethren know I'm alive, I'm okay, but I'm going to get out of here. So he gets out of there, and so now they spread this word. Now the soldiers are getting up going, wait, where's Peter? What the heck? Verse 19. And when Herod had sought for him and found him not, he examined the keepers and commanded that they should be put to death. And he went down from Judea to Caesarea and there abode. So Herod's mad that this prisoner that he wanted to put on show is out. Nobody knows how it works. I don't know. He was here. We went to sleep and he was here attached to us. I don't know how we got out of the jail. I don't know how we got out of the cuffs. I don't know how we got out of the building. So as true Herod fashion, he's just like, well, you're insubordinate. I'm just going to have you all killed. That was the thing back then. Not fired, killed. Verse 20, and Herod was highly displeased with them of Tyre and Sidon. But they came with one accord to him, and having made Blastus the king's chamberlain their friend, desired peace, because their country was nourished by the king's country. So Tyre and Sidon are trying to get in good graces with Herod, and Herod's not happy with them. Verse 21, and upon a set day, Herod, arrayed in royal apparel, sat upon his throne and made an oration unto them. So he gave this speech while wearing a robe made from spun silver, this royal apparel, which shined when he was in the sun. There is history that you can read about this that he did. This is a robe that was made out of literally silver thread. They took silver, they got it. Silver's a metal, but they got it down to a very fine thread, and they wove together this robe. So as he's standing there speaking to them with the silver robe on, the sun comes up, it glistens off the robe, gives him this aura of light around him, basically. So it's a kind of a way of making people think he's better than he really is. Verse 22, and the people gave a shout, saying, it is the voice of a God, not of man. So the people claimed he was a god. He's got this aura around him because of this shiny metal robe. Verse 23, and immediately the angel of the Lord smote him, because he gave not God the glory, and he was eaten of worms and gave up the ghost. Now, this is a little controversial, this verse, because it says, as he's up there giving the speech, he just suddenly collapses and dies and is gone. What Josephus, who's a Jewish historian at this time, says is that he died several days after this event. That Herod had a bad sickness, bad disease, and it eventually took his life a couple days after this event. Verse 24, but the word of God grew and multiplied, and Barnabas and Saul returned from Jerusalem when they had fulfilled their ministry, and took with them John, whose surname was Mark. This is the Mark that writes the first of the four Gospels. He puts the first, they believe his gospel was the first one written. It was written kind of like a playwright. It was written to be enacted, basically. And then after he wrote his, Luke and Mark wrote their gospels using, it looks like some of Mark's in there to compare them, basically, but then they don't fully agree with what Mark did, because Mark didn't put everything in there, but put kind of a narrative of things in there. And so then they put their own things in there that were different. And then John writes his separately from all of them as well. So now we're seeing all these players starting to come together in the gospel. So let's jump over to our next chapter as we continue to move forward.